The company Novotrade started back in the 1980s developing titles for home computers and consoles like the NES. When they began working with Sega, it was 1992's California games for the Genesis that was the first project. Sega was happy with the collaboration, so they chose to work again with Novotrade on a completely new IP for the Genesis called Ecco The Dolphin. Released during the holiday season in 1992, Sega advertised this one big, dropping page after page of printed commercials in just about every gaming magazine under the sun. It was clear Sega believed in this new venture enough to push it heavily that Christmas, with even a number of TV spots making sure it reached as many people as possible. It paid off too, because Ecco the Dolphin was a bona fide hit for Sega, selling well that Christmas and becoming a household name for hundreds of thousands of Genesis fans across the globe. The gaming media of the time welcomed it with open arms, lavishing it with praise almost universally. It didn't matter if you were talking about the ad revenue-loving publications in the US, the devoted Sega periodicals in Europe, and even the usually overly critical Japanese press had many good things to say about it. But if you look at Ecco the Dolphin's modern reviews, it's often not considered in the batch of better 16-bit Sega experiences. Hell, it isn't very difficult to find some outright hostile and dismissive viewpoints that absolutely crush it as a point-blank, terrible experience. In this episode, we will be taking a look at Ecco the Dolphin and see if it's the classic Sega fans would have you believe, or if it really is just a terrible game. Hope you guys enjoy my review of Ecco the Dolphin for the Sega Genesis. Let's begin our coverage by breaking down the story of Ecco. At first glance, you may be led to believe that Ecco was a shallow kids game about swimming around as a dolphin and taking in all the pretty sights and sounds. But you don't have to play it for very long to understand that there is something far more sinister going on here. After a playful bit of learning the ropes around Ecco's home bay, a quick jump into the air changes your world forever. A violent vortex opens in the sky and vacuums up all the life in the immediate area. What was once a peaceful bay full of life and family now lies silent, leaving Ecco completely alone. Your job from here is to go out and find out what the heck happened to your kin. The gameplay is incredibly simple to learn. The A button makes Ecco sing, or what the game calls your sonar. This is a multi-purpose action that allows you to communicate with other creatures and even find important items by mapping out the area around you. Your B button is a dash attack that can be used to defend yourself, or kick up a bit of speed for a big jump. This dash will also get you some food should you use it to catch fish, which replenishes your life. And speaking of life, you'll notice that at the top left of the screen there are two bars consisting of 5 segments. The top bar is your life, while the bottom bar is your air. That's right, Ecco is a dolphin after all, and you need air to breathe. Stay under too long and you'll drown. The final button in our repertoire is C, which controls the speed you swim. Hit it rapidly to go faster and hold it to keep that speed up. Be sure to practice moving Ecco around while you can in that first area, because the stage design gets a lot harder from there. There are many levels that are complicated in layout and objectives, and nearly all are labyrinthian in nature. Rarely will the answer jump out at you for anything. You'll need to explore, speak with the other wildlife, and try different things. If a current is too strong, try following a rock down. If a barrier will not break, try a seashell. Pay close attention to the air, because there are many caves to pass under that can quickly end your quest if you are careless. There are a great many things you can run across while on your quest as well. Lost dolphins that need help finding their pod, crystals that reveal important hints and bestow helpful abilities to aid you on your journey. Finally, there is a password system in place to continue your adventure, which also happens to be one player only. Ecco was a visual stunner upon its release in 1992. Coming in at 8 megabits, Ecco's underwater kingdom really looked fantastic. In shallow water, your environment was lit up with sunshine, showing off the beautiful sea life, plants, and coral all around you. The deeper you swam, the darker and more foreboding the area became. Dangerous sea life presented itself, caves presented dangers and rewards at every turn, and there was always something surprising around every corner. There was a great variety in its many stages as well. Not every place was a simple deep ocean or cave system. Ecco got to time travel, swim around icebergs, meet alien species, and visit sunken ruins. And it all looked incredible. The sprites also moved extremely well. There was an almost rotoscoped quality to them. When something turned in the water, the animation conveyed detail that made it look eerily real. And there was a great variety in those sprites as well. Not only do you get dolphins, but there's a ton of variety in fish, sharks, whales, jellyfish, a giant octopus, and even a freaking pterodactyl. You really had to admire everything that Novotrade managed to fit inside this relatively small cartridge. It was a standout visually on a platform full of games with great graphics. Unfortunately, Ecco uses the dreaded GEM sound driver for its effects and music. I wish I could report that it manages to break free of the usual complaints that come along with that, but I really do not care for the music in this one. It's not outright awful by any means, but there are a lot of sounds that just do not meet the ear well at all. A lot of it does fit the world and environment for the most part, however. As always, I have a few examples so you can make up your own minds about it. Looking back on Ecco, it's still easy for me to remember why I was so enthralled with this title at its release. That gameplay really did make it feel like nothing you had played before. It felt almost like you were flying, gliding through the air with a smoothness that no typical platformer allowed. In many ways, this gameplay felt like an early Nights into Dreams, which itself didn't have much like it at the time. And had Ecco been a simple collectathon like a Mario, or included more traditional level design of getting from point A to point B without backtracking and mazes, I think it may have been a much more popular and had a far more robust endurance for the ravages of time. But I truly admire what Novotrade attempted here. This is no simple kids title. The stage design is challenging and sets you on a quest that requires trial and error, exploration, and problem solving. The environment is incredibly hostile, feeling more like something from the survival horror genre than the kids' platformer many mistake it for. Not only do you have the typical little irritations like jellyfish populating the world, but there are terrifying creatures here that will give you nightmares. Those spider crabs still haunt my dreams. Should you have the skill and dedication to travel deep enough into the game, you will come upon stages that are straight out of a Ridley Scott film. The story is also a big part of this adventure. It's a dark and mature tale of your family being harvested for food by an unknown entity. And once you see that enemy, it's clear that it has happened to many families before yours. That drives a narrative of discovery and challenge that is far more complex than similar games of the era. But for all its good points, Ecco is still the kind of game that grates with many people almost immediately. While being thrust into a situation where you have no idea what is going on, and the truth is discovered slowly through gameplay, it lacks a certain amount of direction where it can feel like you are lost and don't know where to go or what to do a lot of the time. In a game like Sonic or Mario, your goal is often little more than going left to right until you reach the flag or boss. Ecco is basically the antithesis to this in terms of design. Every stage has a different outcome, a different way to get through it. If you are the type to get frustrated quickly because you aren't clear on how to proceed, Ecco will likely be a complete fail that you will not give much of your time. Initially, I admit that I was in that camp. I was thrown so far out of my comfort zone when I first played this, I found it overly difficult and just so different from what I was used to. It was only through patience and wanting to get my money's worth that I was able to appreciate what the developers were shooting for. Even with that said, this game can be incredibly cheap, with constant enemy spawns and a final battle that sets you back to replay the previous level if you fail. Balance is definitely Ecco's biggest issue, and it will break the fun factor for many of you. There is an excellent game well ahead of its time here, but it's often cheap, unfair, and quite frankly, far too difficult for its own good. Whatever your experience is with Ecco, I think we can all agree it was unlike most of the games available at the time. Whether you look at its dark and terrifying story, its gameplay, its sound, its level design, hell, Ecco is still pretty unique all these years later, and that's how I'll recommend it to you. If you are the type looking to relax with retro games and enjoy the mechanics that define the older game design, Ecco is likely not for you. This is not Sonic. It's not a run and gun, or a beat 'em up, or a shooter. It's very much its own thing. That leaves me highly recommending it to those looking for something wholly outside the typical design models of the 16-bit era. This is something you will need to sit down with, pack some serious time into, and enjoy the challenges that come with unforgiving stage and enemy design that can really make things tough. You're gonna die, a lot. You're gonna get lost, a lot. You're gonna drown, get eaten, and I wouldn't be surprised if your controller goes flying across the room a few times. But the reward for all that is a game that once you complete it, feels like something you really had never experienced before. And for some of you out there, that's what gaming is all about. For those that own or enjoy messing around with the Sega CD, there is an upgraded version for that platform with more content, a vastly superior soundtrack, and some added video sequences. There's even a version of it for the Game Gear and Sega Master System. Ecco's strong sales for Sega also prompted the creation of a sequel called The Tides of Time 2 years later, which also had an upgraded Sega CD edition. Ecco also went on to see some 3D additions to the series some years later. I'll always have fond memories of the original. It didn't have the instant appeal of most platformers at the time, and it certainly could turn you away by some of its design elements. But I really do think those were some of its most unique aspects. It was overwhelming at times, but you put in the work, and Ecco looked, sounded, and played about as different as a 16-bit game could possibly get. I'm Sega Lord X, thank you guys for watching, and I will catch you next time.